Hello, scientific writers. Welcome to the next lesson. This lesson is on being concise. The title of the lesson is Keep Your Reader Awake and Alert with Concise Writing. So, awake and alert, what am I talking about here? Well, if your writing is too long, the reader is going to get bogged down. What is concise? Concise is as short as it can possibly be while not losing any meaning or content. If your writing is longer than it needs to be, that's extra work for the reader, and they're going to get tired. They're not going to be alert, and eventually you might put them to sleep. Being too long, not concise, takes away from clarity, takes away from readability and comprehension, and all of these things that we've been working on in this course. So we want our writing to be concise. Readers prefer concise, so give the readers what they want and what they need to read your work so it can have impact. Let's begin by looking at the learning objectives for this lesson. After this lesson, you'll be able to recognize common writing problems that add length. You'll be able to edit those common problems to achieve conciseness, and you'll also be able to omit text that does not need to be included. So here's our list of things that we're going to focus on in this lesson. It's a list of 10 items, and I'll have some examples for you for most of these items, although not for every single one of them. The first thing we'll focus on is how to keep sentences short and with one idea per sentence. We'll look at nominalizations and how to use active voice and active verbs instead of nominalizations. We'll look at meta-discourse and overview sentences, statements of the obvious or unnecessary explanation, unnecessary words and phrases, unnecessary complexity, wordiness, and circumlocution. We'll look at using as well as, has-beens, and inclusion of irrelevant material. And lastly, we'll look at weasel words or equivocation. So let's get started on this lesson. And we'll get started by looking at the first topic, and that is keep sentences short and with one idea. So we already mentioned this concept in an earlier lesson, but it's one that's so important, I thought I would like to bring it back and talk about it specifically again in this final lesson. Let's look at an example of a sentence that is too long and or has more than one idea. The sentence says, plant growth requires a source of nitrogen for the biosynthesis of amino acids, nucleic acids, and other nitrogen-containing biomolecules, and insufficient nitrogen reduces the productivity and quality of crops. So that's clearly two ideas. So one is what the nitrogen is required for, and the second idea is the consequence of insufficient nitrogen. Two ideas, it should be two sentences, and this one is simple because they have this and conjunction, and we can just replace that with a period and make it two sentences, as you see in the revision. So none of the words have changed except that we took out the word and we substituted a period for the comma in that first clause, which becomes a first independent sentence. So that first example was an easy one. Let's look at one that's not quite as easy. So here's a sentence that is 45 words long. So it's too long. We need to think about what this sentence means. So let's take a look at it. It says, since the sizes and locations of plant-available nutrient pools in soils are often highly variable and conditions for nutrient uptake, which are influenced by drought, oxygen depletion, etc., are rarely optimal during a whole vegetation period, transient nutrient deficiencies must be expected to occur frequently. So the questions I ask myself are, what is the sentence about? And once I figure that out, does the sentence convey the intended idea as the subject of the sentence? So when I start thinking about this sentence and I read it again, I think that the main message to the reader is this part that is underlined and in italics and in parentheses. Transient nutrient deficiencies must be expected to occur frequently. That's really what this sentence is about. So all the rest of the sentence is adding additional information which may or may not be useful or necessary to get the point across. So how would I suggest the authors to revise this sentence? I would move what the sentence is about to the beginning. So that's the topic position of a sentence. I would also break it up. So the first sentence would have the main idea. Short-term nutrient deficiencies are expected to occur frequently. Okay, that's the opening phrase. And I've changed must be to are, and I've changed transient to short-term. So I've simplified some of the language. We'll continue reading the sentence. Short-term nutrient deficiencies are expected to occur frequently since the sizes and locations of plant-available nutrient pools in soils are often highly variable. So the second part of that sentence is explaining why the nutrient deficiencies are expected to occur frequently. Now I make a second sentence that says, also, nutrient uptake conditions are rarely optimal during a whole life cycle and are influenced by factors such as drought and oxygen depletion. So I changed vegetation period to life cycle, and I don't like that use of etc. in the first sentence. So I don't think scientific writing should use etc. If you're going to have a list of ideas, either make a complete list or indicate that the list is partial with such as. Now we have two sentences. The first one is 23 words, the second one is 20 words. We're meeting our target goal to get to sentences with an average of 22 or fewer words, and we've also got one idea per sentence. Let's take a look at another example of a sentence that has more than one idea. So this 46-word sentence says, among these approaches, target gene editing, in which nucleotide variation is introduced at an appointed site and the target mutations are obtained accurately and efficiently, thereby speeding up the functional identification of target genes and genetic breeding improvement, is an ideal method for artificially inducing mutations. We have a sentence that has two interrupting phrases between the subject and the verb. So the subject is target gene editing and the verb is. Target gene editing is an ideal method. That's what they're trying to tell us. But we have these two phrases. The first one is defining target gene editing, and the second phrase is discussing the benefits of target gene editing. And they're both interrupting between the subject and the verb. And so we have really three different ideas happening in this sentence. One is that target gene editing is an ideal method. And secondly, what is target gene editing? And thirdly, the benefits of target gene editing. Three different ideas. So what I would suggest to these authors is to revise the sentence like this. I would make it three different sentences. And these are going to result in sentence lengths of 14 words, 21 words, and 17 words. Among these approaches, target gene editing is an ideal method for artificially inducing mutations. With target gene editing, nucleotide variation is introduced at an appointed site and the target mutations are obtained accurately and efficiently. This process speeds up the functional identification of target genes and thereby speeds up genetic breeding improvement. So now we have three sentences for the three ideas. So each sentence is a lot more concise